Everyone, I am finally back. If any of you managed to catch my last video, I actually began to move back in December, and so that's why I had to take a bit of a hiatus. I'm just now starting to get set up. I have a desk and a private room and things, so it's all very exciting, and I'm getting very much used to it. But in other news, this marvelous thing here it was a Christmas present that I received from a player of mine who played in the very first campaign I ever ran. This is actually his character right here. He played Nemean. As you can see, I had a lot of tieflings to deal with, and just as many warlocks. And this is actually, it was a very sweet present because this was the first campaign I ever ran, and it ran for 2 years straight. And in that time, I saw a couple of players come and go, but there were a few that stayed throughout the whole thing. And apparently I did a good job, because it's been a year since that campaign ran, and anyway, it was a beautiful present, and anyway, he commissioned an artist and everything, and it was just very, very touching. So, in honor of that campaign, and in honor of all this going on, I've decided to kind of go into some of the lore of the campaign I ran. Starting out with Nemean here. Now, Nemean, he was the bard, and he was kind of a character. He was one of those interesting players who really liked to loot and turn some of the things he got into and wanted to weave them into his costume as he progressed through the campaign. His glasses here were made from some rare gems that he found, and he managed to find an artificer to turn them into very special eyeglasses. I believe we ended up going with Eyes of the Eagle, if I'm not mistaken. It was either that or Eyes of Charming. It's been a while. But, yeah. He's very charismatic and always thinking of the group. And, you know, when you have a player and a character like that, it's really nice to see come alive at the table. Now, unfortunately, towards the end of the story, we were delving with fiends and devils and all this sorts of stuff going on, and he ended up purchasing a ring from a sketchy vendor that I had put into the game, and he was all about lions, so he got the lion's head ring. That was supposed to give him some boosts and give him access to spells and things like that, one of which put him into contact with an extraplanar entity who, just for funsies, I had to be Asmodeus, who is the Lord of the Nine Hells in most of the campaign settings you see throughout Dungeons & Dragons. And he finally used the ring like a third time to get an answer, after which he was sort of pulled into a little meeting with Asmodeus, who sort of began showing him things and visions and wanted to manipulate him to go against his party. Because the party was trying to build a sword capable of killing a lich without having to first destroy its phylactery. Because they... Hi, Bean! Ah! You know, closed doors don't work if the cat is small enough to get through the crack. But, as I was saying, he had this conference with Asmodeus, and Asmodeus began showing him things. And one of the things Nemean really wanted to know, because the whole continent was sort of falling into peril and everyone was fighting these hordes of undead and demons and all this stuff, he wanted to know if his mother was safe. And in an act of pure cruelty, Asmodeus told him, yes, and showed him. He showed him his mother back at her home, doing a bit of gardening, having herself a good time, and just sort of living her best life. And in the same moment, she sort of looked up to an unheard, unseen noise from Nemean's side of things. And, well, one thing led to another, and a horde of demons invaded her home and slaughtered her. And in that same moment, Asmodeus had bound Nemean into a contract, sort of binding him to his will, to where he would be coerced into betraying the party for the materials for the sword, or perhaps the sword itself if it managed to get forged. And that took a heck of a toll on him throughout the rest of the campaign. And unfortunately, that was just something we didn't really get to wrap up before I had to end the campaign. And in the time since I've wrapped up the campaign, people have been wanting to return to the setting to sort of wrap up more of the loose ends. And I really want to, but part of me is terrified of going back to this because everything wrapped up really well, and yeah. But don't worry about old Nemean. He finally managed to pull one over on Asmodeus right in the end, because they were going to do battle with the greater enemy of the campaign. And he managed to roll a natural 20 to persuade him into giving him more power in order to better complete his tasks. And he ended up with the Sword of Zariel. Now, for a lot of you lore purists out there, that's probably sounding like blasphemy, but it's a home game. I was having fun, and it seemed appropriate at the time, giving more context than I have time to go into right now. But he did that, and ultimately ended up screwing him over. But he, as of right now, he is yet to be able to go back and save his mother, which is something we might wrap up later. But yeah, that was a heck of a campaign, and I always look back on it very fondly. But yeah, so that's Nemean, and that is also the player who commissioned the art piece. Let's see. Tell you what we'll do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna roll a d6 here to see who we get to go next. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So, in the center here, the purple tiefling is actually one of my close friends, his girlfriend. She joined the campaign in in an interesting point. Let's see. She was playing a tiefling warlock with a bit of rogue. Her patron was kind of a surprise. She told me she was going to be multi-classing into it, and I asked her, I said, okay, I'm going to show you a couple images, things like that. I don't want to tell you who your patron is outright. I kind of want it to be a surprise. And she wholeheartedly agreed. She was very much excited for it. And she ended up getting the Raven Queen. Now, this is much different than some of the ones you probably have seen in popular media. The Raven Queen of this campaign setting wasn't this motherly figure, very altruistic. This Raven Queen is crazy, as she is depicted in Faerun. And as such, she was doing a lot of things to really mess with the character. Her name was Asmira, and I had her doing things such as, "Hi, Bean. Hello." I had the Raven Queen doing things to her, and such as like vomiting up a raven. In order to send her a message. Outright possessing her sometimes, because unfortunately the player did have to step away a few times, and this was a good narrative way to pull her away from that. Now, as you can see from the artwork, she is making eyes at another character. They decided to do a little player-character romance, which ended up being very fun to watch at the table, because he was very, very shy. Which, in order to get the sword that they needed for the campaign, one of the components that they needed was a blessing of a greater deity. And her being one of the warlocks, wanted to use her patron in order to receive the blessing. Now, the matron being who she is in this setting was kind of crazy. Throughout the game, she had been making Asmira delve into other people's minds and stealing the memories most precious to them, and sort of sending them to her via magic or an envoy. Now, when they arrived in her domain, and in the Shadowfell, and arrived at her castle, they communed with her there, where she said she would do it on the condition of receiving some of the party's most precious memories. And I don't believe they ended up going with that, but it was still a fun thing to play out and see the sort of inner turmoil go along with the characters. Fortunately, they managed to get out of there okay after fighting a giant of the realm. If I recall correctly, one of the newer books had just came out at the time, and I was very excited to use the stat block. But yeah. Each of them had ended up befalling to madness in the Shadowfell at some point, which they did finally manage to get cured, but it was very fun to play out. She took a poor little NPC with her at one point during her initial delve, and that poor guy, he got so traumatized. He was just a little cleric. He didn't know what he was doing. But yeah, these two ended up getting married in the epilogue. I think they had a bunch of kids. But yeah. As this was a store campaign, I was running 2 different versions of the campaign, so sometimes my lore gets a little twisted. But yeah, let's do another roll, shall we? 5. Okay. Well, this strapping young lad here was played by a buddy of mine. He was actually a part of the first D&D group I ever joined. He was playing a blood hunter, and he didn't give me a whole lot to go with as far as character backstory goes, which is fine. He was just this warrior from traveling around doing all that stuff. So I worked with him throughout the campaign to really kind of build on sort of this the secret-ish society of blood hunters that he belonged to, and we kind of delved into a reason why his character was so special. They kept on having to delve into things involving the Fae at one point in order to get assistance on their journey. And inside the lore of that, there is a particular Fae who was originally a very good aligned entity and had a lot of affiliations with fire and the sun, and was obsessed with this other Fae woman at the time. And due to some unfortunate happenings, the woman that the Fae was in love with fell in love with a mortal hero, and things happened. The Fae turned evil. He went from being essentially like from a spring Eladrin into a winter, and the lovers at the time were protected by a greater Fae and sent away for their own safety. So for plot reasons, I had him be a reincarnation of that self-same hero, and we ended up homebrewing a set of spells for him. I think it was it was a spell called Great Flame Blade, and essentially how it worked was you just made a flame blade, but it acted as a great sword with the accompanying dice rolls. And because he was a blood hunter, I believe I did a little tinkering with his blood boon, or his not blood boons. What is it called for them? Anyway, he had to hurt himself a little bit, and if he did, it would make the sword do more damage. And in an epic moment he had in a fight with an enemy, I remember it was like this moment from like a Final Fantasy game. He had one character sort of shoot him up into the air as the enemy was like trying to fly away, and he just came down and just went like with the Great Flame Blade and just hit him down on the ground. It was great. It was an absolutely clutch killer moment in the combat. And we got to do some fun narrative things with that as well, because he started getting flashbacks to his previous self, who was like this great warrior with armor made of fire and all this stuff. It was really cool. But yeah, let's see. Who do we want to do next? Okay. So this sucker right here. This is Ambrose, or Amy, as some of the party members like to call him. He was by far my most chaotic player in this group. He started out as a warlock with a pact with Cthulhu. And that was a very fun thing to get to do with him. Let's see, he did a whole lot. But as a chaotic player, he ended up killing a couple of NPCs, going a little murder hobo-y, and eventually he did suffer the consequences of that. And during his time, he sort of met other entities who tried to steer him away from Cthulhu because it was kind of a toxic relationship. Cthulhu would, in order to commune with him, he would be like drowning him in ichor or threatening to kill him and things like that. And yeah, we actually had the goddess of luck come in and end up becoming his patron towards the end there, but not before he did end up dying. And it was very dramatic how it happened, but essentially there was a meeting with Cthulhu, and he ended up breaking his pact, and Cthulhu killed him. And then at a certain point inside of Nemean's room, actually, because they were the closest two party members at the moment, this warbling mass of black ichor appeared on Nemean's ceiling, and from it just the dead body of Amy came out. and through a very good, well role-played persuasion check, Nemian ended up convincing the goddess to bring him back to life. During which he finally came back. And if I'm not mistaken, that is how he ended up getting this nasty scar here, because his chest was just ripped open, and the goddess is of luck and fortune, so she ended up sealing his wound shut with molten gold, which is very cool. He did end up introducing crime to an elfin society. He opened an orphanage, and he had like a team of urchins just going around the city stealing things and all this horribly chaotic stuff. But he had fun, and it ended up being a good story. Okay, we're going to re-roll. And that's the same number. Okay, so, I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of fun. Next up is my friend Britt's character, who, yes, ended up marrying Esmera. Yeah, this is Bishop. He came from a very prestigious family. He had sort of the nobleman background, if I'm not mistaken, but he entered in halfway through the campaign, and he was actually a Dhampir. He had been, he was sort of the black sheep of his family, and he ran off with this woman one night, and she ended up turning him into a Dhampir and sort of just abandoned him at one point. And he didn't want anything to do with his family and had all this tragic stuff, but he wanted to be a perfumist. That's all he ever wanted to be, and just wanted to have a nice, comfortable life. And unfortunately, that was kind of difficult for him to do, being a Dhampir, so he became an adventurer, hoping to eventually find a way to cure it. Which he did eventually end up doing. But not before he ended up finding out that it was his brother who had sicked this woman upon him and turned him into this thing. Because even though he didn't want anything to do with his family and had just bequeathed everything to his brother just did not trust that at all. He was a real scumbag and just ultimately wanted to screw his brother over and ensure that he would never return to claim his birthright as firstborn in the family. But he ended up managing to kill her, killed her good, ended up becoming a paladin, which was very fun to see. And they actually ended up doing the most damage to my BBEG in the final fight because of that, which was very fun, very fun. All right, and I believe that just leaves Mark here. Now Mark was interesting. She was also a warlock multi-class. Mark was very interesting. The player came in with this very interesting, very intricate backstory that I tried to weave in as best I could. Mark came from a family up towards the Ten Towns. They were part of this what's the right word for it? It was kind of a mercenary company who believed wholeheartedly in not necessarily doing great things, but yeah. She actually has a twin brother who both of them ended up being infused with a demon, and sort of had these full body tattoos all over them. That's why she's actually wearing stuff to cover that up. But throughout the plot of the campaign, it turns out that her brother ended up being taken over by his demon and was serving the BBEG at one point. And they actually had to go on a rescue mission to save him, just out of coincidence of him being one of the head honchos in the army. And yeah, they did finally end up saving him and uncovering the mystery of the markings that they had. The markings were actually their pact, and it was written in a language that only Igwil, aka Tasha, could translate for them. And through some shenanigans and things that occurred, they found out that the demon that was the progenitor of both of their pacts was split in half, and was in fact the demon Grazd, which is an abyssal demon, so Fey demons, fiends, demons, you know. And Tasha desperately wanted to put him back together, only to take him and subjugate him to her whims and will. So she was very happy to help them out, which she did end up doing after some persuading and favors for a favor and things like that. And ultimately, Tasha ended up making a contract with them and becoming their new patron for both of the twins, actually, which was interesting to play out. Neither one of them were super thrilled to be under her thumb, because Tasha is a very interesting being. Yeah. But I had a lot of fun doing that story arc and all of that, and doing all that there. She actually, in the game, ended up not only rescuing her brother, but also her love interest, which was hilarious to do, because they were in Grazd's, this sort of area that he had taken over, and he had taken them over with a combination of imps and succubi, and one of the succubi kind of took on the form of Mark's lover, and kind of fell for a trap and got knocked out. And it led to this horribly hilarious role-playing moment where Mark was just kept saying all the wrong things. Like, I had her partner just sort of what was it? It was like, I saw you with that hussy, and he was like, she looked like you, and just smack. And it just, everything kept coming out wrong. Mark ended up getting like smacked like 2 or 3 times, and it was a really great RP moment. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever be able to top this campaign that I ran, and I hope that's not true. I hope going forward I have more excellent adventures, and hopefully I can provide more quality content for you guys. Sorry if I'm being a bit vague with some of the details. It's been over a year since this campaign, and I do think about it a lot. I'm a little fuzzy on a couple things. I'll have to go back through and read my notes from that campaign, which I do still have the journal for right here, actually. I might give this a read through later. I'll see if you guys like the video. But yeah, credit where credit's due. Let me go ahead and zoom and enhance here for you. That is the artist's signature. I can try to get the full name later, but yeah. Overall, I'm very grateful for this. It's going to be on my desk where you would normally put like pictures of children. But yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thanks for having me back. I'll see you later.